the Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Stephen Sakach here once again with Tullio, Siragusa, and Maher. In the last episode, we talked about the many personas that can cause your team dynamics to look like a reality TV show where someone gets voted off tribal council. In this episode, I guess we have our rose ceremony where we dive into the positive teammate personas you can embody or work toward. So we had a good rundown of the different traits and personas that can cause these issues in team dynamics. You might recognize them in others or in yourselves. We certainly did. If you see them in others, tackle them with grace, approach them with empathy, really work on developing that shared vision of respect for each other, and realize that maybe you need to invest some time in team building or tools with collaboration or workflow just to help go through some of these processes a little less painfully. So today we want to dive into the positive teammate personas that can contribute to healthy team dynamics, unlike the last episode. So this is the other side of that. So let's start with this first one. This is the unifier. So they're skilled in bringing people together, finding common ground. They help resolve conflicts and diffuse tensions with the team. They promote a sense of unity and shared purpose. I feel like we've got a good number of unifiers at our work, but what are you guys' thoughts on this?
Absolutely. I mean, there's not much more to say than what was just the description of it. It's that person you can count on to just rally the troops together, if you will, right, and get things done. So every company is blessed to have one of these. Some companies are blessed to have a lot of them. So.
It's interesting too. It's, I agree that your Zero Company as an organization has a ton of unifiers, and I've found that outside of all of that, you don't see that, right? I've caught myself now acknowledging when I see unifiers because I found that I'm also a unifier, and I don't know how we all came together and you attracted these like-minded individuals, Steve. It's really fascinating because again, it's not the same everywhere else, and not just in digital marketing organizations, but everywhere where you miss out on those types of people. And then the unifiers that are in these organizations, a lot of times they don't even get the acknowledgement that they're a unifier, and they end up losing that that power that they have. They realize they don't really know it's a superpower, and it's one of the most powerful traits to have in really building organizations. So I think the lack of acknowledgement of unifiers is crazy, but the fact that we have a ton of them and it's a normal life for us is really a gift.
I think, you think of the two forces that are our gravity in our work. So one is, we're building love into everything, right? So we've got this sort of love that's just going around. That's just, super powerful force. And the other really is that goal of connection that we have, connecting. So these are unifying goals. These are like the gravity, the magnets of what brings us together, and why we have so many unifiers. I think never really thought about it too much, but I thinking about it now, you're right. We absolutely have a lot of people that fall under this category.
Well, I think it's also a trait of empathetic people, because ultimately with empathy, it's all about generating connection. Even in design thinking, with its roots in empathy, or its pillar being empathy, the whole end goal is to understand and connect better with all the people involved, and at a much deeper level than just transactional needs, but at an emotional need. And so, I think it's a testament if you have a lot of unifiers that you're surrounded by empathetic people. It's a gift if you know how to use it right and you know how to put it in the right context in terms of how to benefit your clients, your markets with that. So we're absolutely blessed with that, and I'm not surprised. Like attracts like.
Yeah, I think that, and the whole purpose of really for us on the empathy side of things, is that build love into scalable systems. It's like just one of those things, is how can we be more empathetic in, treating each other, treating our clients, treating all the stakeholders involved in the company. And I think that is just this unifying force. And so it does show itself on teams. So
I mean, we've even gone as far as about to introduce a platform that's going to be designed to help other brands unify with their clients. I mean, this is like our culture, our way of life. So it definitely is like one of those things, like you pick the top one that really represents what we do here. So
yeah. All right, the next one. I really love these people, the encourager. They provide motivation, support, and positive reinforcement. Celebrate team wins and individual contributions. They help boost morale and team spirit. I think probably a lot of people might come to companies or workplace where in their life they didn't have this, growing up sometimes. And there's so much trauma that comes with that and so much baggage that comes with that. I think that the opposite side of that, having a parent that's very encouraging, that's very supportive, it's just so healthy for the child. And when you get into the workplace, sometimes you need people around you that are going to encourage you and help deal with some of those kind of past traumas or wounds, even to get your confidence going, to get all these things we've talked about. What are you guys' thoughts on the encourager?
I think probably one of the greatest skills a leader can develop is how to be a source of encouragement to others. It is a great way to motivate and validate people's efforts. I don't think you can have a great team dynamic without the person who's, no matter how hard things are, there's always that person or persons who believe in the team and just kind of let's do this. I know it's not easy, but let's do this. Let's push forward. We're almost there. They're the coach on the team that gets you over the hump or gets you believing in yourself when you don't. And so that's the gift of the encourager, is that they can see in you your ability even when you don't see it, and can encourage you to push through. We see this in teams. You got coaches. That's their job. Really, they're the encourager. A bad coach is just going to be a tyrant, but a good coach is the encourager, right? So that's my thoughts on it.
We have team members too. Steve, I don't know if we're want to name drop one of your really, really close friends that you work with as well. I would call him an encourager. And there's been many times where he's encouraged me. He's our vice president of digital marketing. He's amazing. And I didn't notice it. I mean, I noticed it in the sense I always appreciated his acknowledgement and his encouragement and how it always made me feel. And I found that I've been doing the same for others because I love how much it makes me feel. So I assume if it makes me feel so great, I can only imagine how great it feels. It makes other people feel as well. Now, I never tied the two and two together that it actually plays a factor in a successful organization. And actually, it's funny, I like to take it a step further. I'm finding that people, they love they value the currency of acknowledgement and encouragement more so than any tangible thing you give them. I've been given tangible things as encouragement to keep doing the positive work or so on and so forth, but it never really stuck to me like the positive words I received from our vice president. So just let me just share there. I have to acknowledge it that we have encouragers on the team, and it really changed the game for me.
It's funny because he invites me to meetings just to say, hey, come into these meetings, see if there's anything you would think I could improve on, or he wants me to coach him on stuff too. And I'm like, I sit through these meetings, like, all I can encourage you to do is to just continue to be an encouragement. But yeah, he's such a natural. I always acknowledge that because that's a great leadership quality. Because you leave that meeting. I've seen you guys leave those meetings feeling better about yourself. You can't beat it. You can't beat a leader like that. You just can't even. It's like they're worth their weight in gold, for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, the opposite side of this would be what the discourager, right? Which is like, just feels like these 10-pound ankle weights or something on you. Anything you're doing, and you can just feel how. Like if you think about that opposite force of just how slow and how hard things are and how plodding things are. And if you have that on your team, you know, if you're a basketball team and you're playing with these 10-pound ankle weights all the time, you're going to get out jumped, outrun, all those things. So so the opposite side of that, the encourager takes that off. It's more freedom. It's more agility. It's, you know, jump higher, go faster. I think it's a very important role in the whole process. And we probably people take it for granted a bit, but there's always, you know, that one person that's just such a good teammate. You know, and I'm not saying we've got just one in there, because I can name a few, but you know, in that team environment, 5 or 6 people, you know, having that one person when things get tough, they're gold. You know, they're pushing you through whatever wall that is in front of you, just with, you know, their encouragement.
If you find yourself thinking that they're overly excited all the time, a little bit Pollyanna, you know, maybe, just maybe, you might be missing the whole point of how valuable they are. And I speak that from personal experience. I remember there were times when I would meet people and then I'd be like, why are they just so happy all the time? It's like, you know, constantly, everything is good. Everything is positive. Come on. And I realized it was just a lack of grace and gratitude on my part. Like, I would be a little bit in my head and not realize that this person was actually doing me a great service by, first of all, believing in me enough to encourage me, because that's the key thing. If you have someone encouraging you, that means they believe in you. And that in itself should be an acknowledgement that I am worth encouraging. So again, it's a gift to have that person on the team.
All right, let's hop to the next one. This is, I don't know how much there is to say about this one. It's pretty obvious, though. The idea generator consistently brings fresh ideas and creative solutions to the table, encourages divergent thinking and exploration of new possibilities, helps the team stay innovative and avoid stagnation. So this person's, you know, generally kind of like the, I don't know if they're the fertilizer of the group, but they're creating a fertile environment and they're bringing up ideas and throwing out creative ideas in there. I think the real key there is that they aren't afraid to throw out something that's, you know, maybe just off the wall. And the other key is that psychological safety, which we'll get into in a little bit. Just having that environment that can allow an idea generator to flourish.
Yeah, this is another one where I've never considered myself an idea generator. I was more like the person that works with the idea generators to bring them to life. But having been around them enough, they sort of rub off on you, and you realize that you can come up with ideas yourself. And sometimes I do, but the gift of these individuals is that they do think outside the box. They do question the norm, and often come up with some great innovative ideas. This is why I always encourage organizations to have cross-functional teams work on certain goals. Don't just have the same team in their department work on those goals. Invite other members of the organization, because you never know where the idea generator jumps in from some other team that is completely not in the lane of what you're working on. For example, you might be working on some new market development idea. Maybe that's something that usually sales and marketing or folks like that would be involved with. And you wouldn't think to have maybe someone in operations involved, right? Or in development involved. And they come in and they participate in that, and they bring up some great ideas that you would have never thought of. So you have to have an environment to take advantage of that, for that to thrive. And unfortunately, many organizations, if they're very departmentalized and hierarchical, they actually don't benefit from the idea generators. And it's a shame, because that's where all the innovation comes from. So if you create an environment where people can just throw things up, and sometimes you just throw an idea that makes no sense, but someone riffs off of that, and it's like, yeah, I don't know, but you know, what if we did it like this? And it just creates magic. So highly encouraged to have those individuals.
Yeah, you know, that last point you're talking about, someone throwing out an idea and you just riff off it, I think, and maybe we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I think that's one of the challenges for remote working, is that you're not, you're exchanging emails, or you're exchanging, Slack messages, those kind of things. It's not as fluid in that regard, so that whereas if you're just in a conference room and you've got a whiteboard and you're talking about different things, and someone just says that one thing, that's like that offhanded remark that could help the idea generator or vice versa, the idea generator saying that one thing, then it's like, oh yeah, that's actually, if we did this instead, you just get that whole creative process. So I think that's a difficulty sometimes for if you're in that remote working environment, is to allow some of these idea generators to really get their maximum impact. This next one, let's go to, is the task master. So excellent at project management and keeping the team on track. They break down big goals into actionable steps and deadlines. They help the team maintain focus and accountability. Yeah, this is definitely huge. It's great when the taskmaster is also the encourager, so that you've got, hey, here's what we need to do. I know you guys can do it. You got those kind of combination going on there, versus just cracking the whip or something like that. Or
I immediately thought of our lead developer in the Philippines, who masterfully uses Trello cards and Notion cards to manage every aspects of everything, and then it's just he's truly masterful at it. And it's just like, you look at it and you're like, wow, this just makes my life so much easier. I could just have someone else just lead the way here on this too. So it makes the team feel like they're taken care of, because someone has made it so simple to just get things done. And so it is a form of being a leader, a servant leader, to actually be crafty enough to be able to think about how all the pieces come together. I call them the puzzle masters, right? And then motivating all the pieces to come together. That's a true servant leadership skill, a quality that needs to be nurtured in organizations.
All right, Tullio, this next one, I think you just briefly touched on it, so we'll get your feedback here again. This is the connector. So they're skilled at facilitating cross-functional collaboration, builds bridges between different teams or departments, helps ensure effective communication and knowledge sharing. So Tullio, you sound a little bit like a connector when you're talking about trying to get these.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's if you're trying to get more collaboration in the organization, you need the connectors, the person who knows how to get people working together and collaborating. And again, that all these seem to be tied. I mean, all of us have different aspects of this. It's not like you have one and not the other, but some have more of one or the others, right? So I think being a connector is a great quality if you're a leader, especially in an operational role. Anyone in the C-suite should be an encourager, should be a connector, should be a motivator, someone.
I think you need to be all of these that we're
going to have to be all these things.
If you're not ticking off the box on some of these, then spend some time working on that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like you're reading all this stuff, like that's kind of, we do a little bit of that. But yeah, the connector plays a big role in encouraging people to also step outside of their comfort zone. Which is where growth happens. So often enough, if you've got a CEO who's also a connector, an encourager, you end up with people that grow in the organization. And if they leave because they're either starting their own company or got a huge promotion somewhere, and you're excited for them because you actually kind of enable them to get there. And that's the greatest gratification for a leader, to see people grow and move on. I call it the graduation moment, right? So, definitely, if you're an employee looking for a great company to work with, look for the connectors, the encouragers, because those are some great leaders.
Yeah. So I genuinely believe the connectors are like the glue that keeps it all together for most organizations. You absolutely have to have a connector. The ability to find who does what really well and able to collaborate teams together, that is such a valuable asset to have. And I don't think there's enough connectors in organizations, but I think when you have that person, you see how everything just runs smoothly. And a lot of times they're not really, you can't really pinpoint that they're a connector. They just naturally know where to put you or where to encourage you to go the right direction, or who you need to talk to, who you need to connect with. And that's it. They're kind of back, and they're sent back in the shadows, and everything just works together the way it's supposed to. So I think that the way I like to describe a connector is really they're the glue that holds everything together.
Yeah, and I think to that point too, you can kind of spot the disconnectors. So I'm always saying spot the disconnect in something, and it's usually in people's language and things like that, where it's just this very disconnecting language or some disconnecting behavior. So the opposite side of that is, look for the disconnectors too. But the people that are the connectors, that are bringing people together, that are using language and words and things like that, where they can smooth things over so much easier, where they can, like we said with Tullio, you can go bring different departments together. And sometimes that's really difficult because they've got different motivations and, they've got different agendas, and you're trying to get everyone on the same page to row in the same direction can be really difficult without a really good connectors on both sides, really. Yeah. So this next one, let's go to, is the coach. Provides guidance, mentorship, and constructive feedback, helps team members develop new skills and grow professionally, fosters an environment of continuous learning and improvement. Like I said, I think you need to be all of these in some way or another. Tullio, though, we'll go back to you again. Thinking of the coach, I think of, if I'm thinking of a coach on the team, we've got a few depending on what you're doing. But, I think of you as a pretty big coach of the team.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have to second that.
Thank you. It also sometimes it helps to actually have a coach on the team too, especially amongst the executive team. That is such a critical aspect, to have a third party who could look at things objectively, constructively, and they're also trained. Some of us are trained with some coaching skills and have become certified, so that we can actually kind of help navigate some of the difficulties. And I've adapted some neuroscience techniques and things like that. So it's a really important element. And if you have it as a leader, great. Even if you do have as a leader, I highly encourage any organization that can get a coach on the team, even if someone part-time who comes and supports the team, especially the executives. It's a game changer to have someone be an eyes and ears to things that you may be blind to, because sometimes we're just so busy doing what we're doing that we don't stop and observe from the outside, and someone can highlight certain things like, hey, what about if you work on this? What about if you work on that? I also think, for example, it's good to be a good observer. Like I think of you, Stephen, you're a very good observer, like where people need coaching. And so it's easy to go coach people when you've observed and seen it over time. So you're naturally a coach, you're naturally a coach yourself. So because you have to be able to have discernment to be able to see where someone might need some help. And that requires wisdom too. And that comes with time and experience. But that's a critical aspect to having on the team.
100%. I know that I've always relied on coaches for my own personal feedback. And to take it a step further, I'm finding that now I'm in a position where I have to be coaching as well. So you have your coach and you're always coaching, keeping you sharp as you can be. So I think there's two levels to it. It's like, okay, you always have someone there to guide you, encourage you, guide you in the right direction. And then you pass that on to someone else to keep sharpening those skills, right? So when you have that sort of environment created where everyone's coaching each other in a very positive direction, one coach is mentoring the other coach who's like mentoring another coach, then you have an environment where everyone's sharpening themselves, which is phenomenal.
Even inside of an organization, if you can move away from the titles of managers, like in the middle layer management in a big company, if you can move away from the title of manager and change them to success coaches, something along those lines, you will shift dramatically what the responsibility of that manager actually is. It's not to manage things, it's to encourage and coach people to be able to be self-reliant and not and get things done. So in one of the companies I've worked with in the past, the account delivery leaders, which in most organizations would be called an account manager or a client partner, their title was actually success coach. And it was always an interesting thing to explain to clients, what is a success coach? One, their job was to enable the client to be successful, and two was to enable the team to be successful. So they played this coach role for both sides. How do I bring the client needs and the team's needs together to synergize success for all parties involved? And that was their job as a manager of the team, was to enable the success of this relationship. And that the way they were trained and the way the whole team dynamics was set up was around this context, this idea of we're here to enable the client's success, but we're also here to enable our own success and marry these two to hopefully create the magic. So if you have people that are really good at that, you can create a whole model around it for encouraging success in the organization by having managers step into that coaching role versus the boss role.
Yeah, and even the implied nature of those words changes it from this one role into more of a service role. Now this is the kind of service leadership that you're just setting the expectation with that change of just that title. I think that's a great comment, Tullio. This next one here is the diplomat. Adept at navigating different personalities and perspectives, skilled at finding compromises and win-win situations, helps maintain harmony and prevents conflicts from escalating. So yeah, this is definitely one where you've got to have that real empathetic approach, I think, the diplomat. People need to be heard, and otherwise you're just not going to, you're going to be talking over each other or at each other, and you need someone who can kind of navigate those waters and stop the resentment from happening, or stop the different conflicts from devolving into something even worse and over time. So this diplomat gets in there. It's like, okay, yeah, now you're making a good point. We all have the same sort of goal here. And then you kind of go into it. What do you guys thought on the diplomat?
I struggled with this initially in my career because I had the context of a diplomat needing to be like a politician. And I'm not a good politician. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't have a lot of filters, and so I struggled. Like I felt like I had to be fake to play that diplomatic role, but it was just the wrong context around it. Then eventually I learned, a good diplomat is actually someone who applies a lot of empathy. And once I went down the path of applying empathy, then it became like a life mission for me. Then it became a lot easier to be diplomatic because you're just being empathetic, right? You're not playing this game where you have to like coerce, strategize, manipulate people. No, you just show empathy, and through that, it's a very diplomatic way of dealing with everything. So that required a context shift for me. And so, if you find yourself one of those people who's like, I struggle being a diplomatic because I don't want to play the politics, shift into just being empathetic, because that's going to elevate being a diplomat.
Don't be the politician, because that's not
a politician. Yeah,
because that's not. I mean, what we're looking here for is that authentic connection, that authenticity. You're trying to deal with two people, and they want someone who can be authentic with them, who's going to listen to them, versus the politician, which is the complete opposite of authentic, right? It's like they're going to tell you one thing, and then you'll end up with a knife in your back shortly later. And you've all seen this in the corporate environment or whatever, where someone's so much leaning toward that politician side, and they're the often employed with the egoists that we've seen, I think, in the previous episode we talked about. But versus, like you said, Tullio, it's empathetic based. It's really, if you want this authentic company culture, you've got to have authentic connections, and that's the only way to really have any true diplomacy. Versus something that's just not going to resonate with someone, and it's going to end up backfiring and becoming part of the resentment process that you have to deal with.
What's helped me shift from what I thought being diplomatic was, which was, I thought was being that politician. It was not saying everything that you're thinking, and maybe just taking in information, choosing the right, wrong thing to say, because you're playing the game of information, right? And I found that was, in terms of what diplomatic is, I found that after reading Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a quote that really stuck out to me was, seek to understand than to be understood. So to your point, it's just empathy, seeking to understand. Even in the book Meditations with Marcus Aurelius' diary entry, he talks about that you're going to get up every morning and you're going to deal with bad people. And if you can't help them, sometimes they just can't be helped. You're going to have to learn to deal with them. But he says, Marcus was talking to himself. Have you looked in the mirror? there's multiple times where maybe you've been the person who's wrong in that situation. And a thief that steals to feed his family is not a bad person. You just have to understand, right? And that was Marcus's own words to himself when he had to write, because if you know about talking about diplomacy and getting stabbed in the back, that one Roman emperor, he was the one that practiced true diplomacy with empathy in an environment where real diplomats would stab you in the back, and he was able to manage that all the way to his death. So that was really fascinating. Those two concepts, seeking to understand and having that empathy of saying, hey, maybe you just don't understand, and that's how you can go ahead with that, have that level of empathy to where you could then understand where the person's coming from and truly be able to help them and guide them.
My grandmother used to say, hate the sin, not the sinner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the keys that we talk about on empathy, and you just mentioned there, it's the perspectives, being able to take on multiple perspectives in something. And that's really the key for a true diplomat, is to see through the other person's eyes. And that's what, as consciousness evolves, goes from this really self-absorbed egoic thing to more of a ability to see from multiple perspectives. And that's what makes a good diplomat, I think. So let's talk about this next one. The visionary thinks big and inspires the team with a compelling vision, helps the team see the bigger picture and long-term goals, provides a sense of purpose and direction. So it's good to have a visionary on a team, keeping that sense of purpose, I think. It's good to have that in an organization so that everyone knows what the purpose is, and then they can be visionaries for whatever whatever team they're in, and they can be, okay, how can we achieve this overall purpose, so that you don't always have to be the one visionary. You're not going to be in every meeting as this one visionary, but if you have the vision and the purpose outlined, everyone's kind of adhering to that. Hey, this is what we want to do here. They can all be visionaries on the team in that sense.
I think you can actually codify having vision on a team, and it's absolutely necessary. It really comes down to how does what the team do translate into a purpose. The whole point of having a vision is that you're going towards something meaningful, something impactful, something purposeful. So as a team, it's important to, in your meetings, in your discussions, to think about, and envision where you're heading as a team. Why are we doing this? How is this going to help so-and-so grow in their career aspiration? How is this going to help the team become successful? Turn it into an exercise in introducing purpose for the team. The vision plays a big role in that. And so you don't need to have one big visionary to do all that. It's great if you have that on the team. But just to take proactive steps to just stop and say, why are we doing this? What's the purpose we're trying to achieve as a team? And make it personal. Then that becomes your vision in terms of as a team. And it's totally doable, and it's absolutely necessary. That's how you create cohesion amongst a team. It's really important to do that. And which is why also, even in team meetings, sometimes you'll see a leader repeat themselves in various team meetings, like, here's why we're doing this, just reminding the team of the vision of why we're doing it. Because sometimes you get into the weeds of things and you can easily get lost and like, why are we doing this? So someone has to be the cadre who reminds everybody, saying, here's the purpose of why we're doing this. This is the vision we have as a team. We've all agreed to this. And that's another key thing. You got to do it as a team. You can't, it doesn't work if someone says, here's the vision, go after it, right? That's your vision. The team has to be bought into it. And the best way to get the team bought into it is to have them define it together. That's a key element that a lot of companies don't do, which is why they feel like, how come I can't get everybody engaged around this thing? Because you didn't ask them to participate in creating that vision, and they didn't buy into the purpose. So it's really important to enable good team dynamics, to create a space for those teams to buy into the purpose, contribute to it, and contribute to the vision.
And just to add to that real quick, the vision, to your point, making sure when you're reiterating and reminding people that this is something everyone is agreed to, that everyone's coming together for this one shared vision. And I think the misconception or the mistake that gets made is there could be a visionary, maybe he's the leader of the organization, and he has the vision, and he thinks that everyone's bought into it or assumes they are. And I think you have to have the awareness. maybe ask, maybe have the feedback from your team. Hey, are you guys bought into this vision, or am I just the crazy guy who's trying to force it upon you, right? Try to find an alignment, right, of the shared vision, and then reminding them, hey, this is what we're all aligned on, right? It's all what we agree to.
Yeah, I mean, I would go as far, not even saying, "Are you bought into this?" I would just say, "Here's my idea, but I'd love for you guys to make it better, because you guys could probably think of even better ways to do it. How do you want to do it?" And give it away. Let the team, you give the idea. So you plant the seed. There's an inception that happens. And then the team just rallies around and comes back to you and says, "This is how we can do it." Now, when the team comes back to you as a leader and says, "This is how we can do it," not only they bought into it, they're committed to it. They're going to own it. You don't have to keep selling it. So as a leader, you're going to be a lot more effective giving it away and letting the team make those decisions, and to try to constantly convince them and sell them. And it's too exhausting and it's not effective. So giving it away, learning to trust the team can make those decisions and contribute. This is why we talked about earlier, and even in previous shows, having cross-team collaboration, where you get the insights and intelligence, the collective intelligence of multiple different teams. So it's absolutely codifiable and an important aspect of creating a team dynamic that works extraordinarily well together.
So this reminds me, when you're talking about the buy-in portions of this, is my wife, she used to teach 3rd and 4th graders. So at the beginning of the school year, she'd have them all figure out, hey, so what are we here to do? What's, kind of our overall purpose? What are the rules to achieving that purpose? So they all came up with the rules of, the kind of the code of conduct and what they should and shouldn't be doing. And so they all worked on codifying this sort of vision for everyone. And then she'd put that up on the wall. And so in this team of, I think she had 30 kids. So that's a large team. She was able to get this buy-in that everyone agreed to, and everyone tried their best to adhere to. I mean, they're 3rd and 4th graders, so it's not always going to go smoothly, but she could always refer to that, hey, you agreed, we all agreed to this, and they understood the reasons why they should and shouldn't do something, because it was already discussed, the whole why behind it. So let's go on to this next one. The pragmatist brings a practical and grounded perspective to the team, helps balance idealism with realism and feasibility, ensures that decisions and plans are actionable and achievable. So I definitely like the pragmatist because sometimes, you can get lost in the weeds or lost in the minutia of something that is, hey, the team, you've got it 95% there. Don't just get stuck on the last 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% of this project. This is good enough, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the key to, I think, the pragmatist is kind of understanding, no, this will get us by. So that's really key to any kind of team, is kind of understanding, what that 95, 98% is, where it's like, okay, I can't squeeze any more out of this right now. We'll polish it later and we'll get it done later. And so you're able to move a lot more nimbly and have more agility with the pragmatist in the mix there.
Absolutely. I mean, that is such a critical person to have on the team. I keep thinking about a startup where you have the leaders who have different skills stronger than others. Like you've got the visionary, you potentially have the connector, and you've got the encourager. And you do need the pragmatist, the person who's going to sort of like, this is how the rubber meets the road in real life, because otherwise you're just going to keep, operating pie in the sky idea. And that is a recipe for disaster. So you absolutely need to have that. If it's lacking amongst the leadership team, amongst the team, you need to have that. And if you don't have it on the leadership team, find someone in the organization that is the pragmatist and invite them into the conversations, because you're going to get a lot of benefit from that person.
Yeah, especially with a startup, like you mentioned, you've got to get to that minimum viable product at some point. And, if you want all the bells and whistles, that can get tough to get to that. And you've got investors and they're like, hey, what's going on? And so there's a lot of pressure there. So you definitely need the pragmatist to keep things moving and not get bogged down.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's like good enough. It's, either the perfectionist or the excellence. The pragmatist is more like they strive for excellence. Good enough,
All right, this last one. I think Ash is great at this, so we'll we'll go over this one with Ash in mind here. The culture champion embodies and promotes the team's core values and principles, helps establish and reinforce positive team norms and behaviors, contributes to a healthy, inclusive, and collaborative team culture. The culture champion, I think, is it's especially important when you're talking about all these things, like connection and building love into scalable systems. All these things, you need people that are going to champion those principles in the meetings and champion them in whatever activity they're doing. Ideally, you've got a whole team of culture champions, and I think to some extent we do. But there are some people who are it just comes natural, I think. So I think Ash is one of those guys that it comes natural to.
Well, first off, Steve, thank you so much for acknowledging that. I never actually saw myself as the culture champion. I more saw myself as expressing extreme gratitude for my environment. Yeah, my encouragement of the culture has just been my way of expressing gratitude, because I know how rare what we have or what has been built is. So any environment where they share these values is my way of showing gratitude towards that environment by being an encourager of the culture, being a champion of the culture. So that's also always been for me. I never really acknowledged as someone who managed the culture or as a champion. I was just like, hey guys, I'm just thankful to be here. And I'm going to express my gratitude by being extra appreciative and encouraging others to share the same values of the culture and being able to be a help to those around who maybe it's a newer environment for them and they don't know that this is the way things should and could be, right? You could actually show up to work and be happy and enjoy your experience and give your customers a great experience as well. So yeah, I'm going to say this for the fourth time. Gratitude has been my approach to what has made me the culture champion. But even acknowledging that, I really appreciate it because I never really saw it from that perspective. I always just thought I was thankful.
No, that's awesome, Ash. All right, so we are going to save our playbook for peak performance to part 3 of this. So in the next episode, we're going to dive into the playbook and several things you can do to really build an effective team. We've talked about the negative personas. We've talked about the positive personas, like Ash being a culture champion, Tullio being a great coach. I mean, you can embody multiple of these positive traits. And I think as anyone in the C-suite it should be all of these really, if you can, to some extent, and work on your weaknesses in areas where you don't see yourself as particularly strong in. But anyone on any team, these are the really strong traits that make for a good team. So on the next Bliss Business podcast, we are going to give you the playbook for peak team performance. We'll see you then.